Acción, tu revista mensual de cine y series, con los mejores estrenos de cine, fichas y reportajes coleccionables, series de televisión y 4 pósters todos los meses. Búscala en tu kiosco.
Hello, sir. I'm Jesús Usero from Nación Cine magazine in Spain.
Hi, Jesús.
We met a long time ago in the set of Wrath of the Titans. We spoke about the film back then. So let's talk about the Continental. Thank you so much for this interview, first of all. And where this idea came from, the idea to tell the story about Winston and Sharon way back, way before we met the characters in the John Wick franchise.
No, Jesus, I think my Wi-Fi. Julie, did you hear that question? I think my Wi-Fi or his Wi-Fi got a little.
I think it cut for a while. I was asking about where this idea came from. The idea to tell the story about Sharon and Winston way before we met that in the John Wick franchise.
Well, it was right after John Wick 2. We were thinking about how do we develop a TV show, and the initial ideas had, the Continental in like Los Angeles or Miami set in the same timeline as the films, but we figured out pretty quickly that those ideas didn't, even though there were great writers involved, those ideas didn't have two important elements. One, they didn't have Keanu Reeves. And two, we didn't have the budget that would, we would be paling in comparison to the feature films. And so we cut the idea of, okay, we're going to be doing just, a series on the same timeline as John Wick. And our writers came in and pitched this idea. It came from a line that Winston has, I believe in John Wick 3 or John Wick 2, where he says, I've been the manager of this hotel for 45 years. And they came in and they said, that would take us about 1972. Let's tell the story of Winston taking over that building. New York is lawless and crazy, and there's gangsters, there's post-Vietnam War. And we thought it was genius because not only it's so different from anything we've seen before in the Wick movies, but it actually feeds the Wick movies and vice versa. In other words, if we're so lucky where there's a second or third season on the TV show, the more characters that we introduce on the features could feed into our prequel and vice versa. And so that was the idea. The writers came up with it, and it was a genius way in.
You just mentioned the budget will pale with an actual Continental compared to the John Wick universe, to the films. But how about making a show in the 70s? Isn't that harder? Even harder than making a show that is set in these days?
Yes. So it was pulling off the 70s New York in Budapest was harder than anything we did on the films, because it's not just the buildings, it's the costume design, the hair makeup, the guns, the cars, the trash, the garbage cans. And yes, that was definitely expensive, but it was more of on an action level. If you're watching John Wick 4 and then you come home and watch a TV show that takes place in the same year, like, 100 miles away from John Wick 4, and the action feels smaller, you're going to be like, why am I watching this? I could be watching, the Mothership. I think but I think there's two things about this show. It's not just about let's go watch some great John Wick action. I think it's answering questions that a lot of audiences have, because those first three movies, if you look at it, took place in like a month. And the fourth movie was like 6 months later. So Keanu is either chasing somebody or being chased. There's no time to dig deep into any of these B and C level characters that the audiences are now grown to love, especially Winston and Sharon. And so I believe people are going to, the way into the TV show are going to be like, I want to see more of Winston and Sharon. I want to see how this Continental, this hotel, became the hotel that I know I'm familiar with. I hope and I assume that they know we're going to give them some great John Wick action in there. But I think they're going in there saying, okay, I want to know more. I want to know more about this world that you guys have teased me about over like 10 years.
You mentioned we love Winston and Sharon. So how hard was to find the right actors to play the younger version of these characters that Ian McShane, Lance Reddick, amazing actors. You have to find the right young actors to play them.
Oh, it's horrible, because when you're doing a prequel or you're making a movie about real life people, the first thing you have to do, they have to look like the person. And so right off the bat, you're carving out incredible actors. You know, we couldn't cast a 6'5" blonde hair, blue eye guy as Winston. And so right off the bat, it has to feel the same, you know, vaguely look like the same. And we got really lucky because, you know, Ian McShane's a very unique actor. Those eyes could switch from murderous rage and terror to charm and warmth and humor and sometime within like 2 minutes of each other, you know. And he's also really inscrutable. You don't know if he's a good or a bad guy. You don't know what side he's on, and you get a sense that he has he's done some brutal things to people in his life. You know, it's a tough job, and Colin was able to get that. He has those eyes. He has the look in those eyes. He also has a way to toggle between being charming, and the Winston we meet in the show is definitely more charming and more of a bon vivant. And you do start getting senses of his lethality that he needs to grow over the course of like these decades that end up with the Winston we know from the TV show. From the films. And so Colin was able to kind of wear both hats, which I think are really important. You know, what we didn't want to do is either cast someone or create a character that was exactly like Winston today. It was not more like Batman Begins something. We wanted to see where he became, and then in the course of time, if we ever had like, you know, endless years, you see his evolution into Winston. It happens over the decades, over a lot of hard decisions, a lot of betrayals, and a lot of, you know, tough things in his life that became. But we felt like with Colin, the seeds were there for that Winston present day.
And you also had to find the right director for these 3 huge episodes that feels like 3 films, because we came from the films that are Chad Stahelski's job. How did you find someone that can replace Chad in this universe, in these 3 episodes?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I wouldn't say the word replace. I know what you mean. And actually Chad was really helpful in the search, because we really wanted this to feel like a bunch of films. We wanted it to feel and have a filmic and cinematic energy to it. And Albert, both Chad and I, loved his films. And his films, like, you know, we always said that these films are gangster films. No matter how expensive they'll be and crazy stunts and all that stuff, at heart, they're gangster films. And we felt like that Albert would have that vibe of that he's edgy and he's tough. He's a real filmmaker. And he gets the gangster film world. And he'll have a different point of view enough. So the show felt different. We didn't want another Chad. You know, because then all of a sudden you're just having 6 more hours of another John Wick. We wanted a different point of view, but a different point of view with a director that had a foot in our world. And Albert came in and said, I love this franchise. How do you do this? How do you do that? And let me be a part of it. He didn't come in and say, oh, no, I'm going to change everything. He was a fanboy, but he's a fanboy as a filmmaker. He was wondering how we did these stunts, how we did this stuff. And so that collaboration, mostly in pre-production and between Chad and Albert, was very, very fruitful.
I have a quick last question, because they will kill me if I don't ask you about John Wick 5. Is there a chance that we have that film Is there a chance that John Wick is back in the future?
Yes, there's a chance. I don't know what it is yet. I was saying before, it's like the Beatles. We're like a band that, puts together out an album and then everyone goes their separate ways and comes back. And Chad and Keanu or John Lennon and Paul McCartney, I'm Ringo. They'll call me and they'll let me know when when we're ready to get into the recording studio. But I think there's a desire. We all love each other personally and professionally. We love the characters. We just want to make sure that there's an organic way to tell John Wick 5. We have some ideas. It's not on paper yet. Obviously, there's a strike, which is, hurt us. But I would be, I think that we are hoping that we could figure it out.
We love to watch that film. We love to have more seasons of this show because I had the feeling that it was going to be a mini series and it's done. But if we can have more seasons, it will be great. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Acción, tu revista mensual de cine y series, con los mejores estrenos de cine, fichas y reportajes coleccionables, series de televisión y 4 pósters todos los meses. Búscala en tu kiosco.